So when they're in here, we can see they're quite a bit smaller, and that's because um, this document is only like 1400 by 1050 pixels and not like 4000 some by 3000 some. So it's far smaller, and we don't want to make these bigger than they are or they'll end up being blurry. So it's adjusted itself relative to the number of pixels it has to be full size in this image. But because the original image was much smaller, we're never going to get leaves the size of the whole document. So I'm going to turn one of these off just so I have less on my screen here. The other thing to know about Photoshop is if you make something smaller, if you do like a transform, which I'll show you how to do now, and then you make it bigger, larger, it's probably not going to look good. Because when you make something smaller, it's going to like throw away the pixels it doesn't need. And then when you go to make it larger again, it's not going to look great. So I'm going to have my leaves selected, and I'm going to do Command T or Control T on a PC, and that brings up my free transform box. So there's a lot of ways to do almost everything in Photoshop. I'm using this way because it looks more similar to Illustrator. And the weird thing about Photoshop, and this just changed in like the last version, is it will automatically keep its proportions. So in Illustrator we had to hold Shift, right? If we hold Shift in Photoshop, that enables us to distort things. So it's backwards. Thanks, Adobe. So I'm going to not hold Shift because I want to keep the proportions as they are. And I'm just going to make it real small. And then you need to hit return to sort of like commit that change. If I go back and make it larger, like vaguely the size it was, I can see that the quality, like it's gotten fuzzy around the edges, and it looks like flatter and like has like digital noise in it, like it just doesn't look right. That's because I made it smaller and it threw away the extra pixels. Like I don't need these things. So I'm going to go back to my original, and before I start resizing it, so every time you drop a new thing into your collage, so right click on a part of the layer that doesn't have thumbnail on it, which is just tough on my screen because I made my thumbnails so big. And you want to find this convert to smart object. So converting things to smart objects means that they will not throw away those extra pixels, and you won't have to worry about that quality issue if you're like resizing things and working on your collage. So you're going to do a lot of resizing. So every time you bring a piece in, make sure you convert it to a smart object. So when you do that, you'll see that it kind of throws away that mask thumbnail, and there's a little thing in the lower right corner that lets you know at a glance that this is a smart object. So now I can click on that and do a Command T. I held Shift. I should not hold Shift. So I'm going to make it real small, and then I'll hit Return or Enter. And then if I make it larger, back to about its normal size, I didn't lose any quality. The edges didn't get weird. Everything still looks crisp. So workflow-wise, when you're bringing pieces into your collage, make sure that you are making them smart objects. Any layer or group you can duplicate by dragging it down to the new icon, and I'll make a copy for you. I believe you can also option drag. Yeah, you can option drag with the move tool as well. So that is, if you think of your move tool like a selection tool, it kind of is, then option drag, or sorry, alt or option drag also works. And I can delete these things just by clicking on them with my move tool and then hitting delete, and it will delete those layers. So let's say we want to, we've got our leaf in here. We made it a smart object. In the free transform, you can also like rotate stuff. So let's say this is a thing. And I want to play with the color of these leaves. So if I make an adjustment layer, it's again going to have that solid white mask thumbnail, which means this adjustment is going to apply to everything underneath the adjustment layer. But I only want this to apply to the leaves. I don't want it to apply to everything, just the leaves. So what we need to do is let's go to that layer. For me, it's called layer 1 thumbnail, wherever your leaves are. And I need to command click on that first. So on a PC, I believe it's control click. And we should see there are marching ant selection around those leaves. So anytime that there's a selection on your screen, so those marching ants means a selection is made, that means any adjustment layer is only going to be applied to the part where there are the little marching ant selection things. So if I only want to adjust these leaves, I'm going to use my selective color again, just because I think it's going to get a lot of mileage in this project. So I'll click on selective color, and then the layer mask with it, notice, has the leaves on it, because I made the selection first. And then I said, give me an adjustment layer. So I'm going to leave this on neutrals because these are fairly neutral colors. I'm going to get the most mileage out of that. So I can make those red leaves just by using selective color. So now I have these leaves of doom and or fall. And that only affected the leaves because that's what I selected first. So they command or control click on a masked layer, in this case smart object, first will set your adjustment layer to only apply to that. So we made that a smart object, and it got rid of our mask thumbnail and just made it like that cutout object. So if I've got a normal layer, so I have my original pixels here. So if I command or on a PC control click that, I get the original thing. But if I command or control click on the layer mask, then I'll get the area that I want. So it worked that way because this was a smart object. But if it was something with a mask on it, you would have to control or command click the mask. Because the mask is really just like a recording of your selection. That's really all it is. So if I grab these layers here, you can see that they move, but my adjustment layer did not. So if you're going to select a certain part of an image and do a adjustment layer, you wouldn't necessarily have to keep it on an object. But if you wanted to, you could use an object just to get like a shape, and then you could, just like get rid of the actual shape layers and just leave the adjustment layer there, being that shape. And, we can do this in a lot of other ways. So I'm going to go down and find this London image on the bottom.